All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm back, JL Martinez, your host here on MMFM Digital, brought to you by the Miami Media and Film Market and Camacol. Want to give a special thanks to my guest today, the multiple Emmy Award winning writer, Luis Santeiro, who is a very good friend of the conference. He's been with us many times, now in a virtual form because of obviously the current situation. But it's great to have Luis on the show today. Really, really talented gentleman. A lot of you know who he is, but he's worked in television, he's worked in feature films, he's worked in the theater, he's written novels, he's done just about everything in the writing world to a very high level. So I'm very excited to have Luis, our good friend, here today. I also want to give a shout out to Patty Arias, my good partner over at the MMFM and Camacol, for helping us to put this amazing conference together every year and now bringing it into the digital space. It's been a wild week here in Miami. You know, folks are trying to get back to normal. It's not really working out. They let way too many boats into the marina this weekend. Things are a little bit jammed. So I think as Miamians, we're starting to get used to life again. And it may take us a minute. But in the meantime, I hope that everybody's staying safe and sound and sane, because I know being inside for so long can can affect us a little bit. But I think little outlets like these interviews allow us to have some form of interaction with our friends and colleagues. So on that note, and without further ado, here's my good friend, Luis Santeiro. Hey, Luis.
Hola, hello, Jose Luis. Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. No, thanks again for doing this. And I know that, we're all kind of cozy and hunkered down right now in various parts of the world.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
how are
very
you?
hunkered down. I feel very grateful to be down in Miami,
Oh,
well,
okay.
New York, where I live. My sister invited me down, and it's made it so much easier to be here rather than in an apartment in the city, in the midst of it
Sure.
all.
Yeah, yeah. A little bit of more, I guess, breathing room down here in Miami.
Yeah, the
Uh,
outdoors, which actually New Yorkers can step out and they go in the park, they can go for walks. They never
right.
stop them from doing that. But it's a big difference going back to your apartment and not being able to get together with anybody.
I know. No, no. It's good if you can quarantine with another human being, so you
Yeah,
have a little bit of that social interaction somehow.
much
Um,
better.
yes. Yeah. 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 I've got the three kids and the wife at home, so that's
Now that could be another
yes,
problem.
that's a whole nother situation. But
Yeah.
we're all getting through it, and obviously, a lot of what we're going to talk today about is obviously your storied career in the industry. But something that is helping a lot of people get through this time is watching content. That's the one thing that is still available to us. And television being the staple of that, which obviously you've worked in many for many many years, right? So what was sort of your, a lot of folks know who you are, but a lot of folks are discovering you on this new digital platform. Sort of what was your start as a writer?
My very first job, I had gone to Syracuse to the Newhouse School, and I didn't know what I thought maybe I would go into. I didn't know what end of it I would go into, but I didn't take any writing courses because I thought I definitely not going to be able to make a career as a writer. And I started out working in local TV stations, running camera, painting sets. I had a job at the PBS station in Syracuse where I think they paid us $90 a week to do everything from painting sets to directing our own shows that we had to produce, get the guests because
Wow.
they needed to fill time and do the own switching. Back then you did your own camera switching, everything.
Mm,
But that
right.
was wonderful experience. And then I did cinematography for a group that went around the country doing little documentaries for children,
Hmm.
and I was doing camera editing, the old way of editing and all that.
Hmm.
And then somehow just I started writing, and I got a job at a for a PBS series called Carrascolendas, which was a children's show dealing with a whole emotional thing that was beginning to be a big thing back then. This was in the late mid 70s, and
Hmm.
it was in Austin, Texas. And I went there, and I became a junior writer, and
Wow.
that's where I cut my teeth. And
Wow.
it was a bilingual show because I mean it ran nationally on PBS, but it was basically aimed. I mean, we had Puerto Rican characters, Mexican American characters. We had one Cuban character,
Hmm.
but we did do some bilingualism, and that's when even though I wasn't the head writers, which were experienced people, I think I was 26 then. And so I started figuring out. I was the only truly bilingual one, so I started to play around with how do you make the script move forward without repeating everything.
Right.
And then that ended after a year. I came back to Miami, which was my mainstay. My parents, whenever I ran out of money, which I never saved any with the salaries they paid, I came
Right.
back to Miami, and then I read, or somebody told me that they were casting. They had gotten money to do this new show, Que Pasa
Hmm.
U.S.A.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I met with the producer, well, one of the people who had written the grant, Manny Mendoza, and he said, "Well, we already have a writer that we've hired, but we're looking for people to write scripts." And on spec, actually, I wrote a script on spec, and then went to Boston because I didn't want to stay in Miami at that point.
Wow.
And Boston had some friends, and I thought I could be there. I couldn't afford New York, which is where I wanted to be. And then they called me and they said, we're using it as the pilot. We like your script. They were
Wow.
having trouble getting scripts that fulfilled what they wanted to do, which needed to have the bilingualism, 3 generations, and to flow like a modern of the time American sitcom. And
Wow.
so I started writing from up there, sending them scripts, and finally they said, "Look, we need you to be head writer, and we need you down here." So I came to Miami
Hmm.
during a couple of the production seasons. So that
Wow.
got my career going. Que Pasa USA, really. Thank God for that. Otherwise, I don't know what I would have been doing. In
Yeah.
between, I did everything. I was a parole officer here in Dade County for a year and a half.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. I love that
The
story.
worst parole officer in the world. I believed everything they told me. And they
Right.
had marijuana plantations.
Oh my
They were
gosh.
robbing banks practically. And I said, "Oh yeah, I know they're doing really well." So thank God for the parole world that my career in writing got going. And then
Yeah.
I wanted to move to New York, which is where I wanted to be. And lo and behold, I moved to New York, and a guy who I had worked with in Texas, Ozzy Alfonso, he was a line producer for Sesame Street. And he
Hmm.
said, "Luis, they're auditioning writers. And would you like to audition?" I said, "Well, I don't know that I want to continue writing for children, but yeah, I'll do it. It might tide me over while I find my sea legs here in New York."
Right.
And first of all, I was very lucky to get it, and because everybody wanted that job, and I didn't realize that. And it became my mainstay for 40 years. So
Wow.
I could do. We worked for, even when we were doing 100 shows a year, I could work for them for 6 months of the year,
Hmm.
maybe seven, and then
Hmm.
have the rest of the time free to go to LA to pitch ideas, to write a play, and all that. So it turned out to be the best job in the world.
Wow. Yeah, no, for sure. And that obviously was really one of the staple shows of a generation, and the fact that you were there for so many
Yeah.
years,
I was
right?
there when it was really one of the only main games in town, because now you have Nickelodeon, you have Disney, you have a Cartoon Channel, you have everything. Back then, it was just children's shows. The only ones were the PBS morning lineup, and we had
Hmm.
Mr. Rogers. But we had the Electric Company, but that was a little bit older. But Sesame Street, it was so sophisticated. It was
Yeah.
really, I mean, we had top writers for there. They didn't look for children's writers. I mean, I lucked out. We had top people who had written for Broadway. John Weidman, who wrote
Right.
with Stephen Sondheim, Pacific Overtures and Assassins. We had people who had done major work writing for us, because they wanted comedy writers who could really write for good characters.
Hmm.
And it was wonderful. We could do parodies. We could have guest stars.
Wow.
I wrote stuff for Celia Cruz, for Linda Ronstadt,
Hmm.
for Gloria Estefan, for opera singers that
Right.
I liked opera. I love to do opera parodies for
Wow.
people from Broadway. So that was just wonderful to be able to write a song lyric and then have a top performer do it.
I know, yeah. The amount of stars that made cameos and musicians and actors, and like you said, award-winning writers, folks that came from Broadway and all these amazing places that just kind of came together to do this kids show that, like you said, had some very mature themes, and it
It
was
was
done really well.
amazing. Now I think it's been so many years that, oh my God, yeah, I wrote that song. I
Hmm.
had Garth Brooks. I wrote a lyric for Garth Brooks, which I love country music, and people that I've forgotten that people that I wrote for. I said, oh my God, this is amazing that I wrote for this thing. I'd forgotten.
Yeah, and fast forward to now. I want to show a little trailer. This is actually from the 50th anniversary last year, and just to show folks how far along it's come. And now I guess one of the more recent things, as of 4 or 5 years ago, is that now the first run of Sesame Street is on HBO and then PBS. Correct?
Yes, the first six it runs. I think HBO has a 6-month license, and then those shows go to PBS, so they can still reach kids, which was the original mission. Kids who may not be able to afford HBO, so they can still get the shows 6 months later.
Yeah, and then pretty soon coming to, I guess, HBO Max as well, their new streaming platform.
I guess.
So yeah,
it's come up, really. Yeah, no, it's, and I realize, I mean, PBS, everything has become more costly, more competitive, and that's why, Sesame Street, some people question going to HBO, but it was, it really, it was a necessity, and it's worked out well.
Oh yeah.
And now we have, like I said, the competition is amazing,
Sure.
and also trying to get the kids to watch, because they can stream anything they want.
Yeah.
And a lot of kids stream it later. Then it's not the same pattern of just sitting in front of the TV as they did before.
Yeah.
Parents are also not as home. Mothers or fathers may not be as home as they were 40 years ago or 50 years ago when it started. So before they would say, watch this show. Now kids have their own. Many times they're kind of, as with 3 of them, switching, not looking to whatever. So
yes, yeah, we'll get into some of those anecdotes. I want to show everyone the trailer for the 50th anniversary. So if anyone didn't know, how you can watch Sesame Street today, and then we'll jump into a lot of those topics, including how kids are consuming content in 2020. So let's watch a quick little trailer, and then we'll get back into it with Louis.
Can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street?
Ladies and gentlemen, from our street to yours, we proudly present the super spectacular Sesame Street 50th Anniversary Celebration, starring Big Bird, Elmo, Abby, the Count, Grover, Ernie, Honkers, Two-Headed Monster, Zoe, a cow, Bert, Rosita, Oscar the Grouch, and Cookie Monster.
Hello.
We've got super spectacular guest stars, too. And me, your host, Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Boo!
Join us for Sesame Street's 50th Anniversary Celebration, kicking off Sesame's 50th season.
Come on, everybody!
The Sesame Street Anniversary Celebration, November 9th at 7, and new episodes begin November 16th.
That was exciting.
There we are. That was exciting. But yeah, obviously this is someone that so many folks grew up with, myself included, just grew up with these amazing episodes, and really Sesame Street characters became part of our family. When we had that time, whether it was, in a morning when we were homesick from school, or a day off, or, sometimes they would run them again in the afternoons. But, so much of my earliest preschool days I can associate with watching Sesame Street at my abuela's house, and then she would teach me the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s on index cards, and then that would all be reinforced with Bert and Ernie and the whole cast. And so kudos to you for being a part of.
I was probably writing some of the ones that we were watching as a kid.
Yeah, that was probably for me. It would probably been like the mid '80s, early '80s, something like that.
I started in late '70s writing for Sesame Street.
Wow, so
it's interesting. Things have changed, and Sesame, they all, even after 50 years, they still call it like the 50th experimental season. And they really do go with the times and with the research and whatever things are popular. Like when STEM became popular, we were dealing with that. When a little different kinds of intelligence was a big thing, we dealt with that. The fact that you may be brilliant at math and a dork at literature, or vice versa. I mean, doesn't mean you're not. Was never good at math. Now it meant I had another intelligence, so we dealt with that. But another interesting thing, you mentioned Bert and Ernie. They were so popular at the beginning, and they were Frank Oz and Jim Henson, of course, and they were brilliant. Those segments, they would talk, and they could run upwards of to 2 minutes. Well, at one point, because attention span had changed and the whole mode had changed, they were saying that those weren't as popular anymore, that they were too talky. And most
Wow.
of the writers think that those are brilliant classic pieces, but
Oh
they
yeah.
don't play that well anymore with the younger the generations now.
Huh. And I wonder why that is, because obviously, look, a lot of, I think, what Sesame taught us was communication, was how to engage in conversation, talk about
Right.
feelings and those kind of things.
It has to do with again attention span, and
Right.
kids are watching a lot of things that is really action, action, action. I mean,
Mm,
I look at some of these segments that we did early on, and it could be a bunch of kids with Bob or with Big Bird sitting on the front stoop talking
right.
about sign language or something. Uh, they say that now all the research shows that kids turn off, and it's too bad. I mean, you still have to
Right.
say, but you need to grab their attention, or they'll switch to Nickelodeon. So
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
it is a fine tightrope to walk, and I understand the
Right. Yeah.
situation. You
Like,
want them to
yeah.
watch, you want them to learn because you think you're still doing better content than the other shows, most of the
Mm,
other shows.
right.
But you want to get their attention. If you don't get their attention, you're nowhere. So
Yeah, no, absolutely correct. And so, yeah, and because we kind of live, and you alluded to this, in this sort of engagement era, like right now we're live on Facebook, and I can sort of toggle over and say hi to Patty and Joe Chi, and everyone's commenting, and while we're
you're
chatting,
seeing comments already.
yeah, we're already starting to get comments coming in from, the
Give them the
family.
hook. Give them the hook.
Yeah. The whole family's chiming in and listening to you speak right now, and watching you. But yeah, this is kind of the age we live in. Like, for example, you alluded to YouTube and how a lot of the Sesame Street skits have found their way to YouTube, and a testament to your writing into the show, some of those have millions and millions of views, right?
I have a segment. Of course, anything you do with Elmo right away has star power. But I wrote a song for him, a song lyric. It's called. Must be now about 10 years ago.
Hmm.
It was called Elmo's Ducks, and
Okay.
it's a really counting piece song. But it's cute. It's had. I mean, I think it's had over 30 million hits by now. It's
Wow.
amazing when you think
Wow.
how many people you reach with something that you're sitting at home writing, and I say, oh my God, I want to come up with an idea so I can get out and take a nice walk.
Yeah. No, exactly. That's that's so incredible.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and it allows sort of, I guess, kids to consume this content in these little chunks now.
Yeah.
And that, like you said, may be part of why the medium had to switch to something more visceral and visual, because, like you said, there are so many content choices for kids out there, and how kids consume content. I tell this story about my oldest daughter, who's 6 now, and this was maybe 2 years ago. She was watching a show on Nickelodeon, I think it was, and it was, I guess what you call live or linear television, and a commercial comes on, and she literally looks to me and goes, "Daddy, the TV's broken." And I'm like, "What do you mean, sweetie? I can see everything. It's fine." And she's like, No. I don't know what that is. That's not what I was watching." And she was upset because they interrupted her
Commercial.
show for a commercial.
Interesting. Yeah.
Now, obviously on PBS, I know that's not a factor as much, because the fact that it's not supported by traditional advertising, the way that other networks are.
Yeah. Now they put, HBO, whatever, they'll put the commercials in front of it,
Right.
which says, I mean, even on PBS, they did, the show is brought to you by such and such, and then there's a book, bookended,
Right.
Funny, the other day, one of my sister's grandkids walked by the TV we were watching something on Turner Classics, black and white. And the kid said, "What's wrong with the TV?"
Right. There you go. Yeah. Things that are completely foreign to them now, is, for us was just normal, and now, as technology continues to evolve, the expectations, I think, for content creators nowadays have risen to such a level because of, I think, the technology and how difficult it is to keep young folks' attention. But for whatever reason, I think shows like Sesame Street are still doing that, to a very high level. And I think
Oh
it
my
is
God, the
most.
research, I tell you, because it's always been an understandable battle between the writers say, no, we want it funny, and
Yeah.
research says education. And they say, well, if you say the wording that you want, it slows down my bit, the pacing is off, and it's always been
Right.
that battle. But now, I mean, research, I think, has become even more accurate and more specific. So sometimes we have to wait. They test, they'll do whether it's a storyboard or have kids perform it to kids or something before you say, oh, this works, this doesn't work. So it's,
Right.
sometimes it can be nerve-wracking for a writer. I
Yeah.
just want to be funny. I think that's funny. That works. Believe me. And the research just says, yeah, but it's it's not really getting through the educational point.
Yeah, you're right. And there has to be that fine line, that balance, because you don't want to just produce a pure comedy show,
Right.
but you can't, I guess, be so over the top with the educational part, because then you'll lose them because it feels like school, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's
So
another tightrope, fine line to walk.
yeah, and it's interesting that now, and a lot of these shows, like for example, last year we got to see a film adaptation of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, right, with Tom Hanks.
Yes.
So I guess I have a fun question. Do you think there'll ever be a movie based on the creation of Sesame Street?
Possibly. I mean, it might be interesting. You never know. 'Cause, I mean, it's such a cultural icon
Yeah,
that somebody wanted to do something,
yeah,
about the character, about Jim Henson and the creation of
right,
Jim Henson creating, at that point. I mean, he was very popular on the Ed Sullivan Show, and he did things that were very dark. If you watch them, they're wonderful.
yeah,
And then when he started doing Sesame Street, and and they thought they were creating a children's show for PBS. They didn't know how big it was going to be, and it really, Jim Henson's creations just boomed, and his talent was able to really blossom. And then he went on to the Muppet Show and the movies and everything.
right,
But the initial days when you had Jim Henson and Frank Oz there, who was such influence to watch them, then.
right,
Then they were doing their other stuff, so they weren't as available. They come in for maybe 2 weeks of tapings every year.
right.
But then, of course, Jim Henson died, and Frank Oz was directing movies. But to have that as a base of what the show
Yeah,
became, marvelous. We have wonderful Muppeteers, incredible Muppeteers.
sure.
But I think it all sprung from Jim Henson and Frank Oz.
Yeah. I just think like you're right. The original creative talent behind that show and being for kids, and like you said, everything from the legendary Jim Henson to obviously writers like yourself and Broadway writers, plus all the stars, and having that sort of initial creative freedom to put together something that was really magical for kids, but also
I can tell
helped.
you a funny story.
Yeah, please.
When the first bit that I wrote, and I went to the studio to watch it. I think it was the first bit, but it was Jim Henson. He was singing Kermit the Frog song that I did. I think it was a Heart of a Frog, or I forget, but it was a Kermit thing. And I'm there, and I'm just so excited, and I'm kind of slinking in the back. And all of a sudden, over the PA in the studio, I hear this booming voice say, "Who wrote this piece of shit?"
Oh no.
I wanted to slink, and I just, oh my God, I just wanted to disappear. And then one of the assistant producers said, "That's the director. He does that to every new writer." And it was just like a rite of passage.
I got us.
I
Yeah.
wanted to just vanish in midair. Then the director came over and he patted me. I said, "Okay, you're a member of the team now," or something
Right.
like that.
Right.
But anyway.
No, you're totally right. Yeah, and that's something that all creative, I guess, types have to deal with. Is at some point you put your work out into the world, and it's okay. Do you love it? Do you hate it? And to get that initial reaction, your heart must have stopped for a half a beat. But it's fun that he was just hazing you.
Yeah, he was a teaser, and I grew to like him very much. At first, I was so intimidated. He was one of the John Stone. He had been with Captain Kangaroo, and he'd been in the industry for years. And
right.
Oh my God, I was in awe of him. But of course, I grew to like him very much over the years.
Yeah,
he's now gone, also, as many of those early people are.
So, if that were a scene in the Sesame Street movie, who would you want to play you?
Oh my God, I don't think I'd make it. There's too many much more fascinating people, so I don't know, I don't think I'd make it to that movie.
I think Johnny Depp. How's that?
Whoa, yeah. Why not?
There you go.
He'd probably steal all the scenes, so they wouldn't, they want,
That's true. Yeah, he definitely would probably be a scene stealer for sure.
Not to cast me. I'd be a secondary player in that movie. So.
There you go. But obviously, you've gone on to do a bunch of other works. We talked a little bit about your playwriting career as well. So how being as busy as you were on Sesame Street and these other TV shows, were you able to also find the time to write these plays and even get them produced?
You know, that came out of, I mean, I'd always loved the theater, but initially what I started to do with the time off, I was going to LA every year and pitching ideas. And back then, I don't know how that's changed, but it wasn't hard. You know, if you had a good idea, and I would run it through I was with William Morris back then, and I'd run the ideas by them, and I was pretty good at pitching the ideas. You know, for people who don't know that, you sit in front of about 6 or 7 story development people, and you've got about 2 minutes to tell the story, what it is, and what would the pilot be like, and what would the subsequent stories be.
Right.
And I was pretty good at that, and I would get pilot script commissions, you know, and you'd write it. You spend a couple of months. I found it very frustrating. First of all, none of them got to ever be taped, but there was a lot of rewriting. So you get the money. The agents would say, "Luis, take the money and run. Be happy." But
Right.
I like my writing. I understand rewriting, and you need people to make it better and all that. But when I saw the script that was going to the network, I said there might be like 5% of lines that I wrote, and I found it so frustrating. So I liked the theater, so I started writing for play. I wrote a play, my first play, and it was called Our Lady of Tortilla, and there was a comedy about a woman who had seen the Virgin Mary in a Mexican tortilla, and it dealt with cultural embarrassment. So it did have that crazy situation, but it dealt with her nephews being terribly embarrassed of her and being ashamed of their ethnic culture.
Wow.
And it played off Broadway, and it did really well. Got very good reviews. It's had like about I don't know, I lost count of 200 productions around the country. But what I liked about writing for the theater, as a writer, your work is respected, you know, and I'm all for, I can improve a line, I can change it. If something doesn't work, I'm not stuck to I don't believe this is carved in stone, but I love that. I love having the time to work with actors, to have previews where you can fine tune and change and make it better. I love that.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with the theater. And I was lucky enough to have, you know, a bunch of, you know, back then, particularly in the late 80s, 90s, it was not that hard. I mean, there were a lot of small production theater companies that you could get produced, and then I had them produced also here at the Coconut Grove Playhouse. Arnold Milliman liked my work, so he produced, I think, 5 of my plays.
Wow.
And I love that. That's changed. The whole thing off Broadway is dying. You know, it's because many of the small companies fell by the wayside. They went broke. Right. It's gotten harder. But anyway, I love that. I love working for the theater, and it gave a balance. I had Sesame Street that I could make a living on, and occasionally I get a film commission. I would write it, but most of the time, again, they wouldn't get made. So that I found that very frustrating.
Yeah, no, you're right. The film world is sort of unique in that sense, where it really is more of a producer and a director's medium, whereas theater really, I believe, is more of a writer's medium. So I can see sort of that frustration with the industry on the film side, and how hard it is to get your vision up on that screen in the way that you had intended it.
But it's not even, you know, it's getting it up on the screen, at least getting it up, you know. I know it would be mostly it's a director's medium, but to get a chance to work on something all the way through, you know, you know, the director will put in his thing. There will be, you know, usually will bring other writers to tweak and all that.
Right.
People have a longer track record than you, but at least to get it up there. But most of the times, you know, you thought it was going to get made, and then it didn't. For some reason. 90%. I don't know what the percentage is. I'm sure at least 90% of the projects do not get made. Probably higher.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely, you know, a low margin. So like you said, getting any piece of work that you wrote up on screen is a challenge. But, you know, and obviously, but like you said, you're able to work in multiple mediums like yourself. You can continue your craft, you know, even if that film goes into development or takes forever, never gets made. There's certain things you can't control, obviously. But you did also write a book, right? You wrote a memoir.
Yes, I wrote a memoir.
Yeah.
It came out, I guess, almost 3 years ago now. It's called Dancing with Dictators. And I put in it's really, it's not my whole life. It's really my beginning of my memories in Cuba and from the mid 50s on, I guess. The coming of the Cuban Revolution, then coming to Miami, and then the 60s, which is what I call my Americanization period.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's an interesting book. It's done very well. I mean, I read some of the comments that are posted on Amazon, and mostly they're very good.
Oh wow.
I also try to write. I'm a comedy writer at heart. So even though I dealt with some painful periods, I like to look at the humor of it and the absurdity of it wherever I could.
Yeah. No, for sure. It is a brilliant book, and I was able to go to your book signing in Miami, and it's such a great read. So, for those folks just kind of sitting at home looking for something fun to do, I would definitely suggest that book on Amazon.
Dancing with Dictator.
Yeah.
It's not because I wrote it, but I think it would make a great miniseries. Like 5 or 6 episodes,
Oh yeah.
and it would. It's just that these days, how do you pitch? How do you get to somebody?
Yeah.
Another project that I funny and interesting talking about that, going back to it was the early 90s. I wrote developed a mini series for PBS with
Okay.
Leon Chasto. It was going to be 4 decades in the life of a Cuban family, starting, or 3 decades, I guess, back then. It would be the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, and then the 90s. So
Wow.
Mariel, I think, was the 3rd episode. And then we had the 90s with the Valsero starting and all that. And I wrote 4 scripts, 4 wonderful 1-hour scripts. And
Wow.
with Leon, we both pitched it to PBS at the last minute, as everything happens. Didn't get made.
Huh. Right.
So there's been a lot of near misses, and as in
Right.
everybody's career, not just mine, everybody's. But
Yeah.
I think that would have been great because it had the first wave of immigrants to Miami. Then
Right.
it had the Cuban community starting to blossom here in the 70s. Then it had Mariel, and
Right.
sorry, I tried to stop this and I couldn't stop
Right.
the phone.
No, look, it's perfect.
Anyway.
Yeah, we didn't lose you. You're good. But
Okay.
yeah, I think it's interesting that you said that because the Cuban experience, is such a fascinating story in general, and I think that Hollywood has sort of this love affair with Cuban stories, but they're still trying to figure out how to properly tell those stories, I think.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that, it's very difficult to get it right. Particularly, I think the exile experience, obviously you nailed it with Que Pasa U.S.A. That was brilliant. But then around the same time, a little later, you had that movie Scarface, which obviously also featured one of your actors from Que Pasa, Stephen Bauer.
Which was brilliant. And he
Yeah.
was terrific in that movie.
He was.
He's a very talented man. I want to say something. Why Que Pasa? I've always said why it hit the spot. It was just right. It was developed in Miami. I was the main writer. I was Cuban. The other writers who worked on it were Cuban. The producers were Cuban. The set designers, the costume designers, everybody. It was done within the Cuban community, and also because it was at that point. It came initially from grant from I guess it was the NEA. I don't know, but they were granting minority shows throughout the country. They weren't looking over it very. They weren't like saying, "Oh, change this, change that," as Hollywood would have. We had somebody who did oversee it. We had certain requirements. We have to have supposedly 50-50 or 60-40 language and all that. It was supposed to deal all the issues were supposed to impinge on the kids, on the teenagers. But other than that, we got away with a lot of stuff that if we'd had the network going over and they saying, but will the urban Puerto Ricans in New York understand it, or will the Southwest Mexicans understand it? It would have become nothing. It would have been like what happens to so many projects in Hollywood. And let's say do something real, and whatever the community is, if it's authentic, other communities will identify because they'll see it as real. But if things get washed down because you want everybody to feel like they're part of it, you end up with nothing.
Yeah,
And
no, you're right.
Also had that luck. It was also a great time when Cubans were already getting their foot. They had already been here for a while, but yet they were still following that. Is that yes, but no, yes, but we're going. There was still the thought of we're going back to Cuba, and it was just the perfect time for a show like that.
Yeah, no, I think you're totally right, and you never know because all those things become popular again. Right now, I know that Hollywood is floating around this idea. It's based on an American that fought in Cuba during the revolution. It's called the Yankee Comandante, and apparently Adam Driver's attached to it. This was a gentleman that apparently fought in the Sierra Maestra, but then when he discovered Castro was communist, actually turned against him. I don't know if you know this gentleman. that had a very
I know that. I mean, it's based on a book. I know that book.
correct. Yeah. So apparently that's been picked up. It's been optioned twice. I think George Clooney had it for a while, and now another production picked it up, and Adam Driver's attached. So again, I think these Cuban stories are very cyclical in Hollywood, but you never know when is the right time to tell a story like this. But
Also to tell it authentically,
yeah,
because they're interested in the drama and the this and
right.
yes, it's very dramatic, but to give it an truly authentic quality, you watch things at the end and you say, as a Cuban, you know that it's not 100% right. That's what
I agree. I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think that if they did more work in searching out writers and filmmakers to give it that level of authenticity, I think that you'd have a much better product. And like you said, I don't think that being culturally specific limits your audience. I think that if you have a culturally specific story, yet the story elements are universal, it can appeal to everybody, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I believe that. I remember, with things that I've written that are ethnic, whether they're Cuban or Lady of Tortilla, that wasn't, that could be. But I've had people who come with me who are from, the parents were from Poland or from Romania, and say, oh my God, it was exactly the same in my family,
Right.
And this lady told me once, the issues that the generations face are always the same. And she said something about the only thing that changes from culture to culture is the food on your paper plates or something like that, which is true. You change the food, but the immigrant experience, all that, it's universal. What we go through with younger generations wanting to melt in, going through a point of cultural, if not shame, or just ignoring the other culture, and then wanting to rediscover it later on.
Yeah.
We're human, and I always like to emphasize the universal quality that we have.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, look at even comedies like Big Fat Greek Wedding. What a smaller portion of our community than the Greek American community. But that was a huge hit, right?
And that had an authenticity to it. I don't know
Right.
if it's like Tom Hanks' wife had a big part in it.
Correct.
They had money. I'm sure they said, this will keep the actors that they cast were wonderful. So things like that happen and they take off. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, for sure. And obviously, look, in the meantime, you're continuing to work. I know not as much as before, not, but, with between your book, and I know that you did write on the 50th anniversary of Sesame, and you've also gotten.
I wrote for the season. I didn't write for that
Right.
special. I wrote, I told them I'm done. I'm not retiring. I guess a writer, and I'll always want to do something creative. But I said, I've done it enough years.
Yeah.
But then they asked me, they had one thing that I don't want to talk about it yet because they haven't made it public yet.
Oh,
But
okay.
it was a topic that I said, okay, I want this to be my swan song.
Wow.
And they'll be announcing it soon. It'll be actually part of the 51st season. And it was something they hadn't tackled yet. And I said, yeah, I'd like to write that script.
Oh my gosh.
And it'll be on. And I told them I'll still be happy because I love to songwrite, lyric write. So I told them, yeah, if you have anything like that, any special material for stars, I'd love to do it. But scripts, I think I've written enough. I'd rather. I'm drawing. I'm doing a cabaret act that I do, every now and then. I mean, so I think there are other ways to do. There might be another play in me. I don't know, but yeah, I needed to move on from that.
Yeah, and by the way, your cabaret show was great. I had the opportunity to work on one of them here in Miami.
You were a producer. You were
Yeah,
a producer.
right. With obviously
Patricia.
and Patricia, yeah, Patty Arias, she did a great job, and and it was just such a great performance at Hialeah Park. You had 2 completely sold out nights. It was only a 2-night limited engagement. You even brought your pianist down from New York, who was phenomenal.
Yeah, he's wonderful.
Yeah, he's so, and it if you ever do that show again, obviously when we get post Corona,
I'd love to. I was supposed to do. I wrote a second show, and now I'm writing a third. But I'd love to bring my second one down. We were supposed to do it in New York at this club called Don't Tell Mama last Friday on the 1st. And
oh wow,
that canceled. So I don't know, but when I hope we get through this at some point, whether it's 6 months or 8 months or whatever, I'd love to bring my new show to Miami.
Well, we're definitely gonna
one again or do a mix. So somebody said, well, if you have the third, then you can keep mixing and matching and that. But I keep coming up with more material, and I have a lot of fun. And at this club where I've been doing it, Don't Tell Mama, it sits around 80, and and
Yeah.
it keeps getting filled whenever I do it. So I guess I'm getting my little bunch of what is it, groupies or something.
Yeah, no, you definitely have a fan base out there. And again, talk about like not only writing for film and for television and for theater, you're also a songwriter, and a lot of your songs have made it to shows like Que Pasa and to Sesame. And they're brilliant. And now you're a performer as well.
Yeah, it's a good way to it's a mixture of, I mean, just as a singer, I wouldn't get up there, but when I thought I can put together stories, personal stories, and then do an arc to the piece, and then do songs, some of my songs, some that are not mine, but that add to the moment. And then it's fun. It's fun for me, and I think people enjoy it.
Yeah,
Something
no.
else to do at this stage of my life. I gotta keep finding things.
Yeah, no, I know. I think it's that creative drive that just never goes away, right? It's just one of those things.
That you'll want to do, and I'm happy when now I've been here at my sister's. I've been drawing every morning. I'm doing these drawings.
Oh wow!
And I've been posting some of them on Facebook, but I'm doing that because I always like to do that. And as long as I'm doing something creative, it can be writing a lyric, it can be doing a drawing, it can be coming up with an idea for something. I'm happy,
Yeah.
And I think us creative people, it's when you're not that you start pacing and climbing the walls and all that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've found myself doing that recently, and I just for fun I got into this. The Roger Corman launched a quarantine film festival where you had to make a 2-minute movie at home with your phone and your family. So yeah, I made one called The Water Bottle with my kids that came out pretty funny. But I basically got the whole family into the production, and we spent a whole day shooting. It was great because it was actually an activity for the kids as well.
Can we see it somewhere? Are we going to see it?
Yeah, I have it. I'll share the link. And so we're still waiting to hear back from Roger Corman. We haven't gotten his call yet. But in the meantime, yeah, I'll definitely share it so you guys can see it. But it's
this has been a time. It's just, I mean, that's all the terrible things that are happening, but people hunkering down to, if you use the time right, to do things you hadn't been able to do, the things you never had time to do. I know my creative friends are all coming up with things, with ideas, writing, drawing, doing wonderful stuff. So we humans are very resourceful.
Yeah, no, that for sure. And look, the fact that, in our case as well, MMFM, our 10th anniversary got postponed because of the situation. Which, obviously we're very sad about, but, thankfully due to this type of technology, we can bring at least part of the conversations that we're used to having at the Biltmore to our audience in this sort of virtual capacity.
Great.
So
it's great because I've been to that festival, as you said, and I think it's wonderful.
Thank you.
The speakers that you bring, the sessions that you have, they're just wonderful. It really is good.
Yeah, no, you're right, and obviously, yeah, it's a labor of love that me and Patty have been doing, and obviously, you've been such a kind participant for so many years, and you're right, people get so much out of those sessions, so we're excited to bring it back.
I hope you do. I hope so many things come back. I was also a new play that I wrote, a short play, about an hour, 15-minute play, was being part of a festival in New York in May. Got postponed. They're trying to do it in the fall, but who knows? Nobody knows when will people feel comfortable sitting in a theater with at least 150 other people.
I know.
We don't know.
Yeah. It's a huge question mark. You're totally right. It is a big question mark right now. What is going to be the new normal in this sort of post-corona world, and everything from not only restaurants, but, like I said, the theatrical experience. Our movie theaters can even be able to survive all this, let alone live theaters. I mean, we just don't know.
You mentioned, you posited a possibility of what's going to happen there. And I think a lot of movie theaters were already hurting before this happened. And now that people have really, even the ones who weren't used to Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and all that, they're going to devotees now. So I think it's going to be even harder to get people to the movies.
Yeah, you're right. In the meantime, everything is a balance, right? So, like I think we mentioned before, the streaming of content has grown exponentially. And there are so many options now, to create new content on these new platforms that seem to be eating up a lot of the market share. But I do hope that in some way, shape, or form, to me, there is nothing like that shared experience, whether you're watching a movie in a theater or a play, that's an experience that I think as human beings we need to have, that intimate experience, enjoying something, in a shared space.
I love fine, wonderful films, classic European films, but I also have a guilty pleasure. And every summer when those 2 horror movies come out, not slasher films, but like Conjuring and all that, I love to go. I have a friend who also loves them, so we love to go to movie theater and watch people scream together or throw bottles in the air when the thing pops out of the door and all that. I think that is so much fun, and you can't have that same fun watching it in your living room alone or with a couple of friends.
No, you're right. It's not the same thing. I mean, I guess you could always hide behind the couch and scare your significant other.
Yeah,
but it's not as it's.
Are you that kind of dad? Huh?
Oh yeah, we have fun, but yeah, but you're right. There's nothing like even with Perfect Strangers, just kind of sharing that scare moment or that one bit that works and makes everybody laugh at the same time. I don't think there's anything like that experience than enjoying that in the moment. So I think it'll be back. I think it will.
I hope so, because it is a wonderful to sit in the dark, and also at home. You get up, you go to the bathroom, put it in pause, you get a call. And,
right.
It's not the same. It really is not the same.
Yeah. It's a much more casual experience, that's for sure. But and I think that, ultimately we do have to, as a creative industry, I don't think there's any better industry in figuring out what the new way forward is going to be. And I think whatever it is, it hopefully will be, at least as good or even better than what we had before. I think so.
Let's hope everything good. Let's hope good things come out of everything. So let's hope something comes out of this one.
And in the meantime, we'll keep having these chats. And obviously, I want to thank you for taking part of your afternoon to share some of your story with us. It's been great.
No, it's always fun talking to you, Jose Luis. I always enjoy it. And you bring out things that I hadn't thought about or memories or whatever. So it's always fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa. And I'm just going to put you on hold for 1 second, say goodbye to the audience, and we'll bring you back on just to wrap things up. So if you give me 1 second. All right, there you have it. That was the one, the only Luis Santeiro, who is my very good friend and a member of the MMFM family who's been with us for years. And we're so happy that he was able to share a moment and that he's also at least be able to get some sun down here in Miami during this crazy time. So my name again is J.L. Martinez. I want to thank all of you once again for tuning in. I want to thank again, obviously, the Miami Media and Film Market, Camacol, all our great team that helps put this together, and of course Patricia Arias, Joe Chi, and everybody that helps make our organization possible and to bring these great stories. So as always, sign off MFM Digital. Until the next time, happy streaming.